Nobody expected my brother Daniel to act like he owned the world that day. And honestly, neither did I. The funeral home smelled faintly of lilies and polished wood, and the kind of quiet that only death brings had settled over the room. Mom's favorite piano piece was playing softly, and I could hear my stepmother, Linda, whispering to one of her friends about how Dad always knew who deserved what. I squeezed my hands together so hard. My knuckles hurt. Here's the thing. Dad had been sick for over a year. Cancer. The kind that eats away at you, slowly, leaving nothing but fear and anger in its wake. I'd spent months visiting him in the hospital, holding his hand when he couldn't speak, promising him that we'd take care of things when he was gone. Daniel, he barely showed up. He called twice, texted 3 times, and somehow still managed to make it seem like he'd done more than anyone else. And now, he was smiling, shaking hands, laughing like he was the favorite son, like he had the right. The lawyer, Mr. Thompson, stood at the front, a tall man with a crisp suit, and a look that made you immediately trust him or fear him, depending on the day. He cleared his throat, and the room went silent. Every eye turned to him. I thought I was ready for whatever was coming next. I wasn't. "My name is Robert Thompson," he said, "and I'll be reading the last will and testament of Jonathan Green." Dad. Hearing his name like that, spoken so formally, made my chest tighten. I remembered walking into his hospital room last month, seeing him hooked up to machines, and asking him quietly, "Do you want me to handle things, Dad?" He nodded, barely, but his eyes said everything. He trusted me. He really did. Daniel shifted in his seat beside me. He wore his usual smirk, the one I hated but that everyone else seemed to forgive instantly. I noticed Linda giving me a small, condescending smile from across the aisle. The way she looked at me, I knew she thought I was nothing. She'd always been jealous of my closeness to Dad, always. And now, with him gone, she looked like she was ready to pounce. "Before I begin," the lawyer continued, "I want to remind everyone that this is a legally binding document. Any attempt to contest it will be reviewed in court. Please respect the wishes of the deceased." I nodded, trying to steady my breathing. The will had been drawn up a few years ago, and I had no idea if anything had changed. Dad had hinted once that he wanted to protect me from Daniel's greed. But he didn't say exactly how. The first few pages were straightforward: Dad leaving small amounts to charities, some family heirlooms, to distant cousins, a few stocks and bonds. People murmured politely. Some laughed quietly, relieved. Everyone seemed happy. Everyone except me. My stomach twisted in knots. Something felt off. Then came the part about the house. Our family home. I knew Dad loved that place more than anything else in the world. And for a moment, as the lawyer read, I allowed myself a small sigh of relief. Dad had left it to me. Finally, some justice. Finally, some acknowledgement of everything I had done for him. Daniel's smile faltered slightly. I noticed him glance at Linda, as if trying to see if she was backing him up. She didn't flinch. But then, the lawyer paused. And that pause, God, it felt like time itself had stopped, made every single heartbeat in the room echo. And finally, Mr. Thompson said, carefully, deliberately, "There is one last page. A codicil handwritten by Mr. Green himself, which I will now read aloud." I froze. Daniel froze. Even Linda looked startled. A codicil? Who knew about this? My stomach dropped into my shoes. Dad had never mentioned any changes after the will was signed. I knew something was coming, a truth Dad had saved for the very last moment. "To my children," the lawyer began, "I have left my primary inheritance not to those who seek it with greed or entitlement, but to the one who has stood by me through illness, despair, and fear. This person has earned my trust and my love. To the others, I hope you find your conscience before it's too late." The room went quiet. You could hear a pin drop. And then Daniel's face, my brother, my own flesh and blood, went white. I swear I could see the panic building in him, like smoke curling around a candle. That's when everything changed, I thought. I didn't yet know exactly how. But I knew in my gut that the last page of this will was going to destroy more than just a few family smiles. Because in that brief, heavy pause, I realized one terrifying thing. Dad hadn't just written words. He had left a trap. And Daniel was about to walk right into it. Asterisk. The silence in that funeral home wasn't just quiet, it was heavy, almost suffocating. Daniel's hands were trembling, but he tried to mask it, gripping the edge of his chair like he could hold the world together. Linda, ever the picture of composure, smiled politely, but her eyes were sharp, calculating. I could feel the weight of all their intentions pressing down. Like the room itself was waiting to explode. The lawyer cleared his throat again. As stated in the codicil, the bulk of Jonathan Green's estate is to be transferred to his daughter, Emily Green. Emily me, my hands went numb. Relief surged. But it was quickly swallowed by a wave of anger I hadn't even realized I'd been holding. Daniel's jaw tightened so hard, I thought it might crack. I'd spent years watching him manipulate situations, charming everyone while I stayed quiet. And now, at the last possible moment, Dad had exposed him. Daniel tried to laugh it off. Emily, well, I mean, he trailed off, his usual confidence crumbling under the weight of reality. Linda's face shifted. The smile she had practiced for months flickered, just for a second. And I saw at the momentary recognition that she hadn't won. That she'd underestimated the man she tried to manipulate for years. The room buzzed with tension. Cousins whispered to each other. Friends shifted uneasily in their seats. Everyone had expected Daniel to get the lion's share of the estate. Maybe even the house. Maybe even the fancy car Dad had kept polished in the garage for him. But none of it. Dad had outsmarted them all. What I don't understand, Daniel finally said, his voice low and controlled, though shaky, is why Dad would do this. I mean, we're his children, aren't we? I took a deep breath. We are, I said quietly, my voice shaking, but he knew who actually cared for him. I could see him bristle at that. His arrogance, always his strongest armor, was starting to crack. That should have been my first clue. Daniel didn't argue with me directly. He turned to Mr. Thompson instead. Wait, what does this mean exactly? Are you saying there's no part of the estate for me? What about my contributions? Your contributions, I whispered to myself. What a joke. The lawyer lifted his hand. All contributions have been accounted for. Mr. Green, as the codicil clearly states, this inheritance is given to Emily Green. Any attempts to contest it will be legally challenged. That's when Daniel's temper finally erupted. This is ridiculous. Dad wouldn't do this. You can't just. This is unfair. He lunged forward slightly, as if he could physically snatch the inheritance back from the papers sitting in front of him. Linda's hand shot out, lightly touching his arm, trying to calm him, but I could see the tension between them. For a second it was clear. She hadn't anticipated this fire. I wished I were making this up. The way they looked at me, it was like I'd just been handed the universe on a silver platter, and they hated me for it. Daniel's face was red with frustration, his teeth clenched like he might actually bite something. Anyone? And Linda, her eyes darted around the room, like she was hoping for some miracle, some lawyerly loophole that didn't exist. Here's the crazy part. Everyone else was still smiling. Distant cousins, friends, neighbors, they all thought this was drama unfolding like a movie. But I knew better. I could see it in Daniel's eyes. That smirk, that fake bravado, it was gone, replaced by panic. And that's when it got worse. The lawyer reached into his briefcase and pulled out a small, worn envelope. He looked at it, carefully, like it was sacred. There is one more document, he said, handwritten by Jonathan Green. It was discovered just last week in his safety deposit box, at the First National Bank. Daniel's eyes widened. What is that? Let's see, Mr. Thompson said slowly, turning the envelope over in his hands. This letter is addressed to Emily Green. He held it up so I could see the neat, familiar handwriting. I felt my heart stop. Dad had left something else. Something he had kept hidden from everyone. Apparently, the lawyer continued, your father wanted to make absolutely sure his wishes were carried out without interference. He instructed that this letter be opened only after today's reading. Linda's hands went rigid. Daniel's entire body seemed to tense, like a coiled spring. I could almost hear the gears turning in his mind. Schemes, excuses, threats. He was already planning his next move, but he hadn't realized that whatever Dad had written, it couldn't be undone. The lawyer carefully slit the envelope, the paper rustling like it was whispering secrets that had waited years to be heard. My hand shook. I could feel the room holding its breath. I knew, even before reading a word, that this letter would change everything. Emily. Mr. Thompson said softly, this letter contains instructions that override parts of the will. It's your father's final message, and, well, it's about Daniel. The entire room shifted uncomfortably. Daniel's face went pale. He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself. The betrayal, the lies, the greed, it all felt so close now, like it was about to explode in front of everyone. And that's when the lawyer paused, looked directly at me, then back at Daniel. Then, slowly, deliberately, he began reading the first line. My stomach dropped. Everything I thought I knew about Dad's plan, everything I thought I was safe from, was about to change. The lawyer unfolded the letter slowly, like he was handling something sacred. I could feel every eye in the room on us, but mostly on Daniel. His face had drained of color completely, and Linda's hands were clenched so tightly. I was sure she might break her fingernails. My own hands shook. I could barely hold myself together. But there was a strange mixture of fear and anticipation I couldn't shake. This was Dad's final move, and I had a feeling it was going to be devastating for them. The letter began simply. In Dad's familiar handwriting. Emily, if you are reading this, it means the others have already seen my will. I trust you understand why I had to do things this way. I could feel Daniel's panic rising with every word. He leaned forward, whispering something to Linda, but she didn't respond. Her eyes were glued to the letter, as if she were trying to will it into saying something else, something that favored her and him. Then came the part that made my stomach twist. I know Daniel has always wanted more than he deserves. He believes he can manipulate, intimidate, and charm his way into everything he wants. But he doesn't see the truth. He doesn't see what loyalty, love, and honesty look like. Therefore, I have taken precautions. Daniel's hand trembled, and I could see him trying to mask it by pretending to adjust his cuff. He had no idea what was coming. The next paragraph was even more pointed. In my safe deposit box at First National Bank, there is a set of keys. One key opens a small storage unit in Springfield. Inside is a folder labeled Daniel Green Evidence. I did not want him to find it during my lifetime, but he must never have access to it. It contains documentation of every attempt he made to manipulate and steal from me. This includes financial records, contracts, and letters proving his schemes. Emily, this is your responsibility now. I could feel my pulse pounding. Daniel's face went from pale to ashen. And I swear I saw a flicker of fear in his eyes, the kind of fear that comes when you realize the game is over and someone knows all your secrets. Wait a second, Daniel stammered, his voice cracking. This isn't real. Dad, this is insane. There's nothing in that box that proves anything. This is just the lawyer raised a hand, stopping him. Mr. Green, please. The letter is clear. You are not to have access to these documents. They are for Emily alone. And that's when Linda's facade finally cracked. She leaned toward Daniel and hissed, we can fight this. You can contest it. You'll see. You'll get everything. He loved you too, Daniel. He wouldn't. I looked at her, and honestly, I felt nothing but pity. She'd spent years trying to manipulate Dad, trying to turn him against me, trying to play the perfect stepmother. And now she was realizing the rug had been pulled out from under her. Then it got worse. The letter wasn't done. Dad had saved the ultimate blow for last. There is one more measure, one final safeguard. If Daniel or anyone else attempts to access my estate unlawfully, the inheritance will automatically transfer entirely to the charities I have supported for decades. Nothing for him. Nothing for them. This includes property, assets, accounts, and any pending royalties. I trust you, Emily, to uphold this. Use it wisely. Daniel's eyes widened so much, I thought they might pop out of his skull. He looked like a trapped animal, scanning the room for an escape route, but there wasn't one. Linda grabbed his arm, trying to calm him, but it was too late. The truth had already sunk in. I realized something then. This wasn't just about money or property. Dad had left me power. Power to enforce justice. To hold Daniel accountable for everything he tried to hide. And for the first time in years, I felt righteous. Alive, even. Then came the confrontation I'd been dreading but knew was inevitable. Daniel leaned forward, his voice low, trembling with anger and desperation. You can't do this, Emily, you don't. You don't know what you're getting into. I should have gotten more. Dad, he wouldn't. I cut him off, my voice steady but cold. You mean he wouldn't give you what you earned through lies, manipulation, and greed? No, Daniel. He left it to me because I was there. I cared for him. I didn't try to cheat him, hide money, or charm my way into his favor. You had your chance. He opened his mouth, probably to argue, but no words came. The room was heavy with tension, like a storm about to break. People shifted uncomfortably. Linda's face was twisted in anger and disbelief. She hadn't expected this. None of them had. Here's the crazy part. I could feel every eye on me. But I wasn't afraid. I was ready. Dad had prepared me for this moment. The letter, the storage unit, the keys, it was all part of his plan. And the best part? Daniel didn't even know the half of it. Then the lawyer closed the letter gently, and the room went silent. Daniel's hands shook uncontrollably now. Linda's smile had vanished completely, and I realized the storm was about to hit its peak. The reveal of exactly what Dad had hidden in Springfield, because somewhere, behind that innocuous-looking storage unit, was proof of every deceit, every betrayal, every greedy move Daniel had made over the years. And I knew. When that evidence came to light, the entire family dynamic was going to explode. The lawyer looked at me, his voice calm but deliberate. Emily, the next step is yours. Do you want me to retrieve the contents of the storage unit now? I felt the weight of the moment. One decision. One choice. And the truth would finally be laid bare. The tension in the lawyer's office felt like it could snap the air in half. Daniel and Linda were frozen, their faces pale, eyes darting between me and Mr. Thompson. The kind of silence that grips a room after a storm had settled over us, and I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Are you ready, Emily? The lawyer asked, holding the storage unit keys carefully. His voice was calm, almost clinical, but I could feel the weight of the moment. I nodded. This was it, the moment Dad had been planning for years. The truth, finally, was about to come to light. We drove to the storage facility in Springfield, the sun casting long shadows over the asphalt. Daniel was fuming in the passenger seat, muttering under his breath. Linda sat behind him, arms crossed, glaring at me like she could burn holes through my back. I stayed quiet, my stomach twisted with anticipation, and a strange sense of righteous fury. The storage unit was unassuming, small, and dusty, tucked between rows of identical metal doors. Mr. Thompson inserted the key, and I could see Daniel's jaw tighten as the lock clicked open. The door creaked slowly, revealing the dark interior. Inside were a few cardboard boxes, neatly labeled. One caught my eye immediately. Daniel Green of Adons. I swallowed hard, knowing exactly what it meant. The lawyer pulled it out carefully and handed it to me. I could see Daniel's panic rising like smoke from a fire. He reached for the box, but I stepped in front. Not a chance, I said, my voice cold but steady. This is my father's final wish. You're not touching this. Linda scoffed, but didn't move. She knew she was powerless now. I opened the box slowly, taking care to let the moment stretch. Inside were stacks of documents, letters, contracts, everything Dad had meticulously collected over the years. Evidence of bank fraud, forged signatures, secret deals, and manipulations Daniel had attempted to steal from Dad, the company, and even me. Daniel's face went white. His hands trembled. No. You can't. This isn't real, he stammered. I pulled out a letter, sealed and marked with Dad's handwriting. It was addressed to Mr. Thompson, instructing that the documents be handed only to me. And inside were copies of emails Daniel had sent, forged checks, and even a recorded conversation in which he tried to convince Dad to transfer assets to him illegally. Emily, Mr. Thompson said gently, these documents are fully admissible in court. Any attempt by Daniel to challenge the will backfire completely. Daniel slumped into a chair, his arrogance gone, replaced by panic, shame, and disbelief. Linda's face contorted with anger. I could almost hear the gears in her mind turning, trying to salvage some plan, some loophole, but it was too late. Dad had thought of everything. Then I did something I never thought I would die. Calmly started reading some of the documents aloud. Every fraudulent attempt Daniel had made, every lie, every manipulation, laid bare in front of the two of them. The room was silent except for my voice, steady, cold, righteous. Daniel tried to interrupt. Stop, you can't do this. You're lying, these aren't real. I looked him directly in the eyes. They are real. And Dad made sure you'd never get away with anything again. You thought you could manipulate your way through life, but Dad outsmarted you. And honestly, I feel sorry for you. You had every chance to do the right thing, and you didn't. Linda gasped. Emily, this is insane. You can't. We were supposed to. Supposed to what? I asked softly. Steal from Dad. Cheat him. Lie to him. Dad trusted me because I cared. And that's why this is happening the way he intended. Daniel sank lower in his chair. The fight had left him. The panic. The shame. The betrayal, they were consuming him. He had thought he was untouchable. That he could charm and manipulate everyone, including our father. But Dad's plan was flawless. I took a deep breath and placed the box carefully on the table. This ends now. You either accept it, or you lose everything. Completely. Linda's face turned red, then pale, then blank. I could see her realizing, finally, that all her schemes, all her manipulations, had failed. Daniel's shoulders slumped. He no longer had words. He no longer had confidence. He had nothing. I looked at Mr. Thompson, nodded, and he smiled slightly. Your father would be proud, he said. The silence that followed was heavy but satisfying. Daniel and Linda couldn't speak. They couldn't plan. They couldn't charm anyone anymore. The truth had finally emerged. And Dad's justice was served. I stepped outside into the sunlight, taking a deep breath. The weight of grief, anger, and betrayal lifted slightly. Dad had left me more than inheritance. He had left me clarity, closure, and a way to make sure the truth was never hidden again. And in that moment, I knew something important. Betrayal might sting, greed might try to steal what's yours, and manipulation might seem clever, but the truth always finds a way to shine through. The weeks that followed the reveal felt surreal. Daniel and Linda didn't speak to me, not a word. It wasn't even the silence that comes from shock. It was the silence of defeat, of someone finally realizing they had lost everything. Daniel tried a few quiet calls, desperate to reason, to charm, to manipulate. I didn't answer. He left messages full of guilt, threats, and excuses, but I could see through them all. For the first time, I felt a sense of power I hadn't allowed myself to feel before. Dad's house felt different now. Empty rooms echoed memories of laughter, arguments, and quiet nights with him. But instead of sorrow weighing me down, there was relief. Relief that justice had been done. Relief that Daniel's schemes were exposed. Relief that Dad's wishes were honored exactly as he intended. Linda tried to come around one Sunday, pretending to want family reconciliation. She rang the doorbell, wearing her usual polished smile. I opened the door and simply said, "Not today." She stared for a moment, like she couldn't understand why I wasn't devastated, why I wasn't begging for some version of peace. Then she left, and honestly, I didn't care. Daniel, however, was harder to watch. He had gone from angry and entitled to desperate and hollow. Friends and distant relatives whispered that he had lost business deals, that people were no longer trusting him, that his reputation was tarnished beyond repair. I didn't take joy in it, well, maybe just a little, but I did take satisfaction in knowing he was finally facing consequences for his actions. One evening, I sat in Dad's study, going through the documents in the evidence box. Everything he had left me, letters, recordings, financial statements. It was like he had handed me the map to truth itself. I realized something important. He hadn't left me this to punish anyone. He had left me the tools to protect myself, to protect the family legacy, and to make sure that loyalty and honesty were rewarded. Then I found one last note tucked into the very back of the folder. It was in his handwriting, smaller, more intimate. Emily, always remember that integrity is more valuable than wealth, and love is more valuable than inheritance. You have my trust, my pride, and my love. Carry it wisely. I couldn't stop the tears. For a long time, I had carried grief, guilt, and worry, wondering if I was doing the right thing by standing up to Daniel, by defending my father's wishes. But reading those words, I felt a sense of closure I hadn't known was possible. Dad's trust in me was a gift I would never forget. Word got around town quickly. Daniel's failed attempts to contest the will became almost legendary among neighbors, friends, and even in small legal circles. Some people whispered that he had been humiliated at the lawyer's office. His face pale, his arguments crumbling under Dad's meticulous planning. Others said Linda's manipulations had been completely undone, leaving her with no allies in sight. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Watching them face the consequences of their actions was enough. Justice had been done, and it had been done perfectly. Dad's final instructions had ensured it. Months later, I organized a small gathering at Dad's house, with the few family members who had always supported him and me. We didn't talk about Daniel or Linda. We didn't talk about greed or betrayal. Instead, we laughed, shared memories, and celebrated Dad's life the way he would have wanted. For the first time in months, the house felt alive again, warm and safe. And somewhere deep inside, I realized the most important truth Dad had left me wasn't the inheritance or the documents. It was the knowledge that integrity, loyalty, and love could withstand betrayal. That even when greed and manipulation seem strong, the truth has a way of shining through. I still think about Daniel sometimes. I wonder if he sleeps at night with the weight of his choices pressing down on him. I hope he regrets what he did, not because I hate him, but because I hope he finally understands the value of honesty, love, and family. And honestly, that's enough. So, if you've ever had a family member betray you, or someone tried to manipulate their way into your life, remember this story. Sometimes, the truth comes out when you least expect it. Sometimes, justice is patient. And sometimes, the people who think they've won are the ones who lose everything. If you could be in my shoes, finding that hidden letter, uncovering the evidence, and seeing a lifetime of manipulation exposed, what would you have done? Would you have been brave enough to stand up? Let me know in the comments. And if stories like this, family betrayals, hidden letters, shocking wills, keep you on the edge of your seat, make sure to subscribe. Because with every story, the truth finds a way to be heard.